Well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this second session of the CS4All webinars. So I will share my screen in order for you to see the slides that we have prepared for you today. Okay, I think that you are already seeing this, right? Okay, so just to remember you, okay, so we are the consortium called CS4All, so Computer Science for All. What we are trying to do is to promote adult education. So what we really want is to share with you everything that we are doing on the field in order for you to be engaged and to think, if you can, in somehow also be interested to teach computer science and computing in particular, following the program that we are creating for the 12 first years of school. Okay, so of course that most of the things that we will share with you today as well are being reflected in a formal education, informal education, but of course we are also trying to put techniques of non-formal education, because these are really important ingredients that can boost in somehow the way our kids, our young people are learning all these materials. Okay, so today we'll be focused on the first cycle. Okay, so in Portugal the first cycle covers the years 1 to 4. Okay, so we are talking about kids between 6 and 10 years old. And today we will, of course, try to introduce everything that we are doing, and most importantly, how are we starting all these when we are talking about kids in these young ages. Okay, so this will be covered in this first part, so the introduction. And we'll try to explain exactly how are you doing things. Don't forget that everything that we will share with you today, uh, uh, all these things are included in pilots, okay, that we are doing on the field. But of course, we may also share with you some of the results we are getting, and everything, all the feedback we are receiving, not only from teachers but also from parents and so on. On the second part, we'll cover binary codes. Okay, so we'll talk about the binary language and how everything is possible after starting talking the language of computers. Then on the third part, we'll talk about images. Okay, so images are really important and very interesting from a pedagogical point of view, just because it's a easy and objective way of see in which we can see that the binary language can be applied and is applied in many of the things that we do every day. Okay, and so that's why we will talk about images and how can we not only represent images in computer, but most important, how can we manipulate images in computer. Then we'll do a short break, probably not in the third part. We'll probably put the break after the part 2, okay? And then at the end, we'll talk about lists, okay? So lists or sequences are one of the most important data structures that are used when we are talking about computer science. And so we'll explore lists and try to figure out how can we use them to introduce very basic principles with these young students that we are talking about. Okay. Also important is to share with you what we think when we are talking about these three words or expressions. Okay, so when we are talking about computation, we are talking mainly about the calculus, so the part related with calculations. Okay, and so that's precisely why we will not talk about computation today. We'll talk mainly about computing, okay? And when we are talking about computing, we are talking about software and hardware, and how can we combine these two things together in order to produce the results we are trying to achieve, okay? And that's why we are mainly talking about teaching computing rather than talking about teach computation or even teach computer science, okay? Because when we are talking about computer science, we are talking about theoretical and practical academic disciplines that covers lots of things related with computers and things that we can do with computers. And so again, that's why we'll be more focused on the computing part rather than the computation or computer science part. Okay, and so based on this, we'll start all our journey by talking about computers and computing, and then we'll talk about language and representation, okay? And so once again, the most important thing is to remember that we are talking about first cycle. And in the first cycle, we will focus on the second year of the first cycle. Okay, so this means that we are talking about kids with 7 years old. And this is really a very challenging thing for all of us to try to think about how can we teach computing to kids with 7 years old. And as you can see, and you will see on this presentation, we are trying to do all these things in very different way that you will probably are used to, okay? So, but let's start, okay? First of all, it's important for, and again, don't forget that today we will think about all of you as if you are a 7 years old student, okay? In most of the parts. Okay, so first of all, it's really important to understand that computers are machines, okay? And so the most important ingredient for us to start dealing with such a machine is to ask ourselves, how can we communicate with a computer? Okay, and of course that for that, we must ask ourselves, what is a computer? Okay, and so our first question to all of you is, if you ask a between 6 and 10 years old student, what is a computer used for? What do you think will be their answers? Okay, and I will start a poll just for you to also to write whatever you want to, and that will try to also to reflect and to put all of us reflecting about what you think that kids in young ages answer when we put this kind of question to them. Okay, so I will just start the first poll. Okay. Okay, so I will now start the first one. So let me just try to identify, look at. Okay. So I think that you have now the first poll appearing on your screen. And so it's a free answer. Okay, so just put whatever you think that yeah, okay. You'll just wait 2 minutes in order for all of you to put things there. Okay, I think that we already have 13 responses. So, and I think that based on this, we will be able to share with you also some of the things that happens when we are giving our classes. But you are right. So most of them say that they play games, that they watch movies. Okay. But it's very interesting because one of the things that I'd like to highlight here, based on some of the responses that we receive when we give our classes to these young students, is that they imagine, they have lots of imagination, as you know, and so they sometimes answer things that computers cannot do. And that's one of the most important things that we'll try to explore when we are talking about kids with 7 years old. Okay, so we are trying and we will try to explore their imagination, okay, in order for them to not only think about what they can do with a computer, but most importantly is that what can they think they may do, or in other words, what they think they would like to do with a computer. Okay, and so this is the first thing that I would like to highlight here, is that when we are trying to, and when we are teaching these young generations, it's really, really important that they, it's important for us to share with them the ambitions behind the use of computers. Okay, and so that's the one of the things that I'd like to discuss with you today. So, but in a very basic way, okay. So, of course, all them knows that a computer is a machine, okay. That they computer can do things for us, okay. They don't know exactly how how computers work and how they can do the things they do, but they do things for us. And the most important thing that we all now also try to explore is that, okay, think about a computer as a friend, okay, and a friend that can give you lots of things, that can help you to do lots of things, and it's a friend, so we need to communicate with him, okay. And so that's the most important thing that we'll try also to do when we are looking for a starting point for everything. Okay, so as you were saying, okay, in the answers on the poll, yeah, kids usually not, they are most familiar with mobile phones today rather than computers, okay, and that this is really important. Even when we are talking about playing games or talking with friends or even watch movies or cartoons and so on, they typically use the mobile phone. And this is really a very important topic, just because whenever we want them to do things in a computer, okay, from a pedagogical point of view, they will have lots of limitations because they are most used to use a mobile phone, and so they are not used to use a keyboard. Okay. So now, and in terms of imagination, what's important is that they should, and that's precisely what we try to say to them in the first classes of the first cycle, is that they should think about computers as a friend and about computing, which is the most important part of everything that we are trying to teach here, is that the computing is the knowledge that they will get, and that allows them to turn a computer into a magic wand. Okay, and so this is what matters. Okay, so that there is magic, that they can play with this magic if they get this knowledge related with computing. Okay, and of course, computing will allow them to do magic things with computers. Okay, so Another thing that we want to share with you, based again on what we have done until now, is that computer history is really important. Sometimes we think of these young kids as, well, they are not interested in the history of computing or to see things that were made and developed 50 years ago, 100 years ago. Okay, based on our experience, that is not true. And we start our journey by sharing with them some part of the history of computing. One very popular is the example of the ENIAC. Okay, ENIAC is considered one of the first computers ever. Okay, and again, what do you think that students think when they see the following two images that I will show you? So typically we show them lots of images, but these two are the first ones that we usually share with them. Okay, so these they see lots of cables. Okay, and a big room. Okay, with stuff, but they really don't understand exactly what is going on here. But of course, they then are very curious about everything when we say that this is a computer. Okay, and this is something that they are really not used to see a computer, a big computer with lots of cables and so on in a room. The other thing is this second photo. Okay, and when they see, for instance, these pieces that these four women has in their hands, sometimes they think that they are holding beer, for instance. Okay, so this means that they are really looking at this. Of course, they are recognizing for women, but rather than that, they cannot do any kind of association to what a computer is for them. Okay, and that's the most important part of these stories and these histories. Okay, so for instance, ENIAC was created in 1945. Okay, and one of the characteristics of this machine is that it was 30 meters long and weighed as much as 6 elephants. Okay, so these kinds of stories, and that's why we are sharing with you this, is these kinds of stories are in fact very fascinating to these young kids, just because by looking at these and by hearing these stories, they can put their imagination working. Okay, sorry. Okay, another thing that is important and really relevant when we are talking about gender equality is that they they look at these photos and they see mostly women. Okay, and it's important to share with them, and we have also some very interesting feedbacks from our students when they think about this, is that most of the women that appears here are in fact working with computers. And most important is that they are the ones that deals with the mathematics. Okay, and for instance, one of the things that is really interesting when we're talking about the history of computers is that the term computer was in fact used to identify women that were good in math. Okay. And so the idea is that when we are talking about 45 and 50s and so on, yes, most of the times the people, when they were looking at these images, they were simply thinking that these women were beautifying the machine. But okay, but that was not true. Okay, and we now know the true story behind all this, And the good thing is that when we talk about computing and when we talk about hardware and software, we are in fact talking about gender equality in terms of achievements and in terms of work, because men were in fact more related to the hardware parts, building the machine and looking how they could put a computer like ENIAC up and running from a physical perspective. But women were in fact working on math and working on the software, working on the things that could explore the physical part of the machine and to put it working. Okay. And so to finish this first part, the most important message that we would like to highlight here is that computing is in fact for everyone. And it's really important to teach computing the right way, because if we don't do that, what we'll have is once again to have lots of boys dealing with computers and trying to do stuff with computers and not girls. Okay, based on the results that we have achieved until now and based on all the classes that we gave, both boys and girls are really happy by exploring all this journey together with us and all this knowledge about computing and computers uh, 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 as we are doing. Okay, so now we'll just talk about language and representation and following everything that we have discussed until now. Okay, and we'll talk about sign language. Why are we talking about sign language? Sign language, just because we'll try to remember that when we are talking about communication, we have lots and different ways of communication that we can explore. And once again, based on history and history of mankind, but history of computing as well, we are always trying to figure out new ways of communicate. Okay? So when we are talking about a machine, so again, this new friend, what language does he speak? Okay, how can we communicate with such a friend? And this is the first question that we put also in front of our students, because it's probably also the first question every time two humans are together. Okay? Even when we talk different languages. Okay, so the first thing that we try to do with another human being is to try to speak, to try to communicate with such a person. Okay, and for that, it's also important for us to remember that everything starts with knowledge representation. So in a sense, we need to find a common ground. Okay, common ground that we can explore together afterwards, and that's when we try to identify what on the things in which we can agree and try to build the communication on top of those agreements. Okay. And so when we are talking about knowledge representation, we are talking about ways and forms of communication and representation of information. Okay. Of course, that we have lots of them. We write, we speak, we draw. Okay, so all these are ways for us to communicate with each other. But now, for instance, and just to see different ways of communication, we will remember the sign language. Okay, and for instance, the importance of all this is to, when we are doing these classes, is to show some images and try to ask students what they think is being represented on these images. Okay, so here we'll see the complete picture, okay? But in fact, when we are talking about these different hand gestures, we are talking about ways to represent and identify letters in the alphabet. And by doing this, we are just finding a different way to communicate symbols, but symbols that has meaning for us. We are talking about letters, and based on letters, we write words and we write sentences, we write tests, and so on and so on. And so, since letters and numbers are really important for us, this is usually the starting point every time we are talking about different ways of communicating to represent some of the things that we already know, we are used to, and to represent them in somehow. Okay? So now when we are talking about computers and going back to computers, what is their language? And how can we communicate with a computer which is not even a live being? Okay. And now it's time to remember what a computer is made of and why are we talking about binary language when we are talking about computers. Okay. So the zeros and ones, in fact, are symbols that are used in math. And this is in fact, so the relation between the two states, physical states, that are related also with passage of electricity. So we are talking about the on state or minimum resistance to the passage of electricity. And then we are talking about off state or maximum resistance to the passage of electricity. But then when we are talking about these physical states and something that is really happening in the physical world, then we move to these two symbols, these important symbols that are these representing 1 and 0. And this is when we move from the physical part to the virtual part, to the world of math, to the world of thinking and the world of our knowledge, okay? And so this is why it's so important to remember this very simple concept that that means that yes, we are talking about a binary language, and yes, we typically use the numbers 1 and 0 to identify these two states. Okay? And so, and when we are talking now about zeros and ones, we have all the world of mathematics to explore, in a sense. Okay? And that's why we are really talking about zeros and ones instead of the two original states, physical states, on and off. So now I would like to do a very simple poll or activity with you, which is the following. Okay, so we will now start our communication, but based only on zeros and ones. Okay, and of course, that when we are talking about binary and we are talking about zeros and ones, we can also, of course, talk about two different things: red and black, yes and no, okay, earth and moon. Okay, so the important thing here is that we need to have two elements that in somehow will represent the on-off states that we are talking about here. Okay, and so the question to you is the following. So I will launch a second poll, and you will answer to these 5 questions. Are you a female? Are you in school? Are you a teacher? Is your favorite color blue? And do you like to play football? So, but you will answer these 5 questions, but using only zeros and ones. Okay? So to remember, the 0 represents no, and the 1 represents yes. Okay? So I will launch the poll now. The poll now, sorry. No, the poll, not the poll. The poll. Okay. Okay, so you just need to write in sequence, okay, the answers, but as a sequence of zeros and ones, okay? I will give you 2 minutes for you to do that.
We already have 2 soulmates, so 00110. 3 soulmates, wow. 4 soulmates. There are 4 male teachers who like the color blue and do not like to play football. There are also more males than females answering. I think we can move on, Luis.
Yeah, okay. So, as you know, the saying, so we easily identify soulmates, okay, by looking at the answers, okay. And so when we are now talking about a sequence like this one, okay, we can easily not only understand what we are saying here, okay, so we are answering in a specific way to the 5 questions that we were asking for, but at the same time, it's also very easy for us to identify the patterns of the answer. Okay, this is just because we are just talking about 2 symbols, okay, zeros and ones, and so by putting these symbols together, and in particular these sequences together, it's very easy to identify the patterns of the answers of everybody. Okay, but the most important thing here is that we are now talking about binary codes, and this is really when things start happening, and when the magic starts. Okay, because one thing is to have these 2 states or 2 symbols or 2 ways of representing things, and in fact we can only represent 2 things. Okay, we have a 0 that can represent anything and 1 that can represent anything as well, but we can only represent one thing with each one. But when we combine the zeros and ones, and when we are talking about binary codes, we don't have limitations anymore. So we are talking about the possibility of represent almost anything we can imagine. Okay, and that's the magic of the binary codes. Okay, and so now with this we end the part 1. We will, as we did in the previous webinar, we will open a few minutes for you to put questions if you have some questions that we want to put, and after this we'll proceed to the second part, and we'll try now to explore these concepts in different and very imaginative ways. So
Yes, and regarding the questions, you may either raise your hand and we will allow you to turn on your microphone, or if you are shy, you can also write the questions in the chat and we will answer them too. Okay, I
we have
will
one.
allow you to speak.
Right.
Thank you for your presentation. Hello, can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. I was just looking through the languages,
Yeah.
and how from a very young age, because like for me, English is not my first language, and
Yeah.
so we really have to adopt, try and learn it to understand. And also in our language, like Fijian language, we don't have um, that language too as well for especially for computing. Like you have Indian language, you have French language, for computing. How is just a question on regarding in how are we able to adopt other languages in order to especially for little kids like from my country
Yeah.
to understand.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that is really fun and is precisely to explore the binary language with kids. Okay, because after they play with these very basic concepts, and after they see that they can in fact communicate in different ways using a basic language like the binary language, this is in fact an excellent way, in our view and based on our experience, to show them that they should be in fact aware that to communicate, the most important thing is to use imagination. And then, of course, when they are learning new languages, like English, Portuguese, or other, the ingredients are there as well. So instead of a 0 and 1, we'll have symbols that represent the basic elements of the language, and then they will do the same thing we do when we create binary codes. Then they start combining the letters in order to create words and so on and so on. And so, in a sense, when we are talking about binary language, is like we are really starting dealing with a language from the very beginning. And this is really it's excellent to when we are talking about teaching these concepts to young kids.
Thank you very much, because this was one of the biggest challenges for me. Stepping into IT was
and
because
most
of the language barrier.
Yeah, and also one important thing, based again in what we are doing and our experience, is that's why we are not convinced that we should start using programming languages too early. Okay, so that's why we are starting doing things like we are sharing with you here, instead of start teaching them a programming language, even a programming language like Scratch, okay, which is a visual programming language. But we are trying to avoid working and dealing with all these ingredients because we think there is too much information for these young kids. Okay.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, and there's a question here, which is basically if we get into programming at this stage, I believe. And in the first 2 years, our approach is completely unplugged, which means that we do not use the computer at all. Like the students don't use a computer, and the teacher sometimes shows some things on the computer, but not much. But once they are in the third grade and in the fourth grade, then they start their little first experiences in a programming language, which, by the way, we chose to be Haskell, their first language. So yeah, the first 2 years we don't get into programming. Oh, okay. In representing letters,
Yeah,
we in third and fourth grade we talk about ASCII codes. Yes.
yeah,
So
absolutely.
yeah, we do talk about encoding. We just don't get much into programming. I'm sorry, I misinterpreted your question. I thought you were talking about programming.
Yeah.
But encoding, yeah.
And we introduce ASCII in the third grade, as Inez was saying, just because in the second grade here in Portugal is when they learn about letters, okay, and numbers and so on. And then on the third grade, they already write well and so on. And
No,
so
they
that's
already do that in the second grade. They already know how to write and read in the second grade.
yeah, yeah. But that's why we are always, when we are talking about ASCII, we are teaching them ASCII between the second and third grade. Okay.
So no more questions about
We
this
have,
part?
okay. Yeah, I think that is, yeah,
That's all.
okay. Okay, so if there are no further questions, then we'll jump to the second part. And
Yeah,
Inez, do
I
you
may
want?
share my screen.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, so let's go into the second part. Can you see me and hear me well?
See and hear, yes, but the slides are not appearing yet.
Yeah, because I haven't shared them yet. No
Okay,
worries.
okay.
Okay. Where are you? Full screen? Full screen. Can you see the slides now?
Yeah.
Is everything okay?
Yes, perfect.
Okay. Okay. So let's move on to part two, where the fun really begins, I promise. So we are mainly going to talk about binary codes. You already know what binary language is, so it's a language based on two symbols, which may be a 0 or a 1, yes or no, black or white. There are many possibilities. And these are the things that we are going to work, binary codes, and then we are going to see what we can do with the binary codes. Okay, and we are going to start talking about Braille system. Perhaps you have already heard about Braille. It's basically a writing system that blind people use in order to be able to read text and access information, because blind people or visually impaired people can't see, so they need to use their hands, their fingers, to read. And the Braille system was invented with that purpose. And so the idea, our approach, our methodology in the first two grades, so when kids have 5, 6, 7, 7 years, our approach is storytelling. So we literally create stories to captivate students' attention, and they really create this emotional bond with the characters in our stories, and they always want to know what's going to happen next. So they are learning without realizing that they're learning. For them, they are just hearing a cool story with cool characters. They always have some adventure going on. but these stories actually convey implicitly computation material, okay? So we talk about computing in an indirect way. So the stories are just normal stories with fairies and dragons and monsters and all of that. But they are connected to computing activities, as you will see in a few moments. And the slides and the material that we are going to show you today is more directed towards second grade students. So students who are 6, 7 years old, I think. Okay, and the story that we created and that is narrative in the background every class is called Max and Ari, Friends Without Limits. So that's the name of the little story we created, and I will try to tell you a bit about this story. So Max was a blind boy, and sometimes he felt very sorry.
Yeah,
Things keep popping up, but you can see it now.
No. We are still seeing just the first slide.
Just the first slide.
Yeah.
You're not seeing any of this?
Nope.
You keep seeing the first slide?
Yep.
Oh, you should have told me that earlier. I don't know what happened. You saw the first slide all the time. Oh my God, that's so embarrassing. Could have said something. Can you see it now?
Yeah, the first slide.
And this one.
Yeah, now we see.
Now you see it?
Yes.
Okay. So this was basically what I was saying. There's someone raising their hand. Luis, can you please monitor
Yeah.
that kind of stuff?
Yes. Okay. Yeah, but I think it was just to say to you the same thing, that now everything is working.
Okay, thank you. And I'm so sorry for the inconvenience. So basically what you missed was this, which is not very much. And I was talking about this slide, so I was saying that our methodology consisted in telling a story to captivate students' attention. And the story that we're going to tell you in a shortened way, of course, is called Max and Ari, Friends Without Limits. So, Max was a blind boy, and sometimes he felt very sad because he couldn't see like the other boys. Okay, well, sorry. He couldn't see like the other boys, and so he wasn't like other boys. He just felt different, and he felt incapable, because he had a limitation. He had a limitation. He just couldn't see the world and people around him. And the other character is Ari, a fairy that secretly lived in Max's house garden without Max knowing. So this fairy came from an enchanted land, and she was expelled from the enchanted land by an evil witch. And this witch cast a curse on her that made her talk like a computer. So not only Ari was transported to the world of humans, she was expelled from the enchanted land, but also she can only communicate through zeros and ones. Okay, so Ari too has a limitation. Max had a limitation. He was blind, he couldn't see, so he had to communicate differently. And Ari also has a limitation. She cannot communicate in English or Portuguese or any of the normal languages. She can only communicate through zeros and ones. And the purpose of these two characters is to implicitly show students that sometimes we have to deal with machines that have limitations, like our computers. Okay, our computers are limited beings. They aren't even life beings. And so we need to communicate them accordingly. The same way that we can't write text expecting a blind boy be able to read it, we also can't just start talking with the computer expecting the computer to understand us. We need to learn the computer language, and we need to communicate in a way that the computer understands. So basically, this is the setting. We have a blind boy that doesn't know that there exists a fairy living in his garden. And Artie wanted to go back to the enchanted land. She was desperate. She did not like our world here, too much pollution and noise and all that stuff. And so one day she had an idea. She had an idea to go back to the enchanted land, but she couldn't do it alone. She needed Max's help. So one day, Max woke up and found 4 envelopes under the door of his room. And because he couldn't see, he couldn't really realize what was inside the envelopes. But his mother told him that each envelope had 6 strips of paper, and each strip of paper consisted of a sequence with 6 numbers, which could be 0 or 1. So for instance, one of the codes could be 111000 or 101011. So it had 4 envelopes, and each of them had 6 strips with binary codes. But what was the meaning of those codes? Well, we need to help Max understand the messages because he really wanted to know. And to help Max, we need to understand Max's way of communicating, which is through the Braille system, right? So our students, when we are teaching this, they need to understand, they need to have a rough idea of how text is represented in Braille. And you may be asking, what the hell does that have to do with computing? Just hold on a second. Braille was actually the first binary writing system. So Braille is based on a binary system, okay? So basically, we can convert Braille into binary codes of zeros and ones, which is the language of a computer. And that's the connection, okay, between Braille and the binary language of the computer. So in Braille, each letter is represented by 6 dots, and the dots can be raised and you feel them. You feel like a little height on the sheet, for instance, or flat, so you don't see them, they aren't raised, okay? And furthermore, these 6 dots representing a letter, they are arranged in a matrix or a grid with 2 columns and 3 rows. And this is, in Braille, the representation of the word in situ. In situ is the organization for computing here in Portugal. So you see, we do have 6 letters. I don't know if you can see a little hand when I do this. Can you see it?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the first letter, letter E. Oh, you will see. Yeah, exactly. So this is letter E. You see, we have like 2 raised dots diagonally. Then we have letter N, which is like this. This is letter S, this is letter I, this is letter C, and this is letter O. Okay, so essentially each letter consists of 6 dots, which can be raised or not. Here we can only see the raised dots, the others are flat dots. And why is this a binary system? Because the dots can only be in 2 states, okay? They can be raised or they can be not raised, that is flat. And we can do this association between raised flat and black-white squares. So when a dot is raised, we can consider that it represents a black square. And when a dot is flat, we can represent it by a white square. So we moved from a binary representation using raised and flat dots to a binary representation using black and white cells. Okay, so like Louis said, a binary system is just a system based on 2 things. And those things may be raised and flat dots or black and white cells. And so we have this correspondence. And this will be important for us to understand the codes that Max received. So basically, this is how we can represent the letters in Braille using black and white squares. Okay, it's a simple way. We don't need to be drawing dots and filling them and all of that. We just use black and white cells. Quick and easy. And now we can do another switch, another correspondence. We can say, okay, so I am going to represent a 1 by a black cell, and I'm going to represent a 0 by a white cell, and vice versa. So black cell 1, white cell 0. And this allows us to convert a grid with numbers, with zeros and ones, into a grid with black and white squares. For instance, this grid here on the left, 1, 1, 0, 0, 1, 0, corresponds to this black and white grid on the right, and vice versa. If we have a black and white grid, we can determine the corresponding 0 and 1 grid. Any problems so far? Everybody keeping up?
Yep.
Great. Okay, so let's recall why exactly we are doing this. We're doing this because Max had those envelopes under his door which had binary codes, and each binary code had 6 zeros or ones. In Braille, each letter is represented by 6 dots. So what are we going to do? If we use zeros and ones to write the letters in Braille, we can associate to each letter a binary code. So these are basically binary matrices, binary grids, but we can write this as a sequence of numbers. For instance, letter A corresponds to the binary code 100000. Okay? And how did I do this? So basically, the order by which we read the zeros and ones is the natural one, as if it were a text. So in this grid on the right, I would read it like so: 1 1 0 0 1 0, 1 2 3 4 5 6, just like this. So the binary code 110010 corresponds to this grid. I start putting the numbers there in the order indicated in the grid above. Okay, so we can establish a correspondence between binary matrices and binary codes, as well as a correspondence between binary codes and binary matrices. So now we have everything we need to help Max. But first, we need to assure that you actually understood something of what I was saying. So our guy, Luis, the king of us all, will please launch this poll, okay? And you need to figure out what is the letter represented by the binary code 101100. And don't forget that a 1 represents a black square, whereas a 0 represents a white square.
Okay.
Okay, so which of these letters is represented by this binary code? Okay, we have some answers. I cannot see. Oh, wait. Maybe I can see them on my phone. Let's take a look at the results. Okay, so everybody that answered got it right. Congratulations. It is indeed letter H. Okay, so we have this binary code 101100, and we write by the order that I said the numbers on this grid or binary matrix, and then we paint black each square that has a 1, and we paint white each square that has a 0. And ta-da, we have letter H here. And now you can go home and tell everyone that you know Braille. You know Braille. Okay, so in our classes, how do we do this? Basically, we do this group work activity. We split the class into 4 groups, and each group has roughly 6 students, and we give one envelope to each group. So each group will get a word with 6 letters because each little strip represents 1 letter. And in the end, so after all 4 groups decipher the respective letters, we get a message with 4 words, each word with 6 letters. Okay, I hope this wasn't too confusing. And the message that Ari sent to Max, of course, Max didn't know it was Ari, but this was part of Ari's plan to go back to the Enchanted Land, was "Quer dançar comigo amanhã?" in Portuguese. But I know that most of you don't understand Portuguese, so we translated it for you. So basically, Ari asked Max if he wanted to dance with her tomorrow. Okay, do you want to dance with me tomorrow? And now your goal is to figure out what did Max reply to Ari? What was his reply? So you should take a look at these dots in the message and the dots representing the letters, and tell us, what did Max reply to Ari?
So I will launch the poll. Okay.
Yeah, please.
Okay, launched.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I'll just give a few more seconds so that more people can reply. Okay. Okay, so again, everybody got it right. We have a bunch of genius here today. I'm kidding. I'm always kidding. Please don't take me seriously. Very well. So we can move on, I suppose. If nobody has any doubt, we will move on. So Max Max said yes. Max said yes. So he accepted to dance with Ari in the next day. Now that we have seen what binary codes are, we are going to see what we can do with binary codes. This is where the fun begins. And we will talk about binary matrix transformations. I know the name is a little scary, but don't worry, it's not scary at all. So what happened was that Ari plan worked. She thought, okay, so I'm going to ask Max to dance with me, and we're gonna dance so much that we will start twirling, and whoop, we will appear in the Enchanted Land. And that worked. They were back in the Enchanted Land. So it was the first time for Max, not the first time for Ari. And she was so grateful because Max helped her, because Max danced with her, and that made possible the return to the Enchanted Land. She was so grateful that she wanted to do everything she could to get Max to regain his sight and stop being blind. And how was she gonna do that? Well, she had to transform the binary word corresponding to Max, so the binary code corresponding to the word Max, into the word C. Now, remember that Ari could only communicate through zeros and ones, so she's going to need the help of 2 elves. And I'm going to present you the elves now. So the first elf is Flip, and when he encountered Max and Ari, he said, "My name is Flip, and I'm a true hero. That which is 1 will become a 0. I have too much energy and I like to have fun, so that which is 0 will become a 1. Next, we have elf Hip, which is pretty much the opposite of Flip. Oh, sorry. So he says, my name is Kip and I sleep all day. I'm really very lazy and in bed I'm gonna lay. I don't like to move, I don't like to run, I do nothing to 0 and I do nothing to 1. So these are our two helps, flip and Kip. And what do they represent? Well, mathematically, sorry. Okay, everything's fine. You're seeing the slide, right?
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So the elf flip represents a mathematical function whose domain is 0, 1. So the first set is 0, 1, and the codomain is 0, 1, 2. This means that the function takes a 0 or a 1 as input and outputs a 0 or a 1. And in case of flip, so flip will transform a 0 in 1 and 1 in 0. Okay? Because if we recall his text, he says that which is 1 will become a 0, that which is 0 will become a 1. So it flips. Okay, it flips. A 0 turns into a 1 and a 1 turns into a 0. And what do you think will be the function, the mathematical function that keep represents? Does anybody want to take a guess? So 0 is going to be mapped to 0 and 1 is going to be mapped to 1. So basically the elf keep represents the identity function. Now, I know that probably some of you do not have a mathematical background, but a function is a really important concept in mathematics that students learn around 7th grade, so when they are 12 years old. And but we start teaching these kids, our kids, functions quite early because they're really important to programming, especially in a functional programming paradigm. Functions are very important, and if we simplify them and we teach them in a fun way, kids do understand and do enjoy it. Um, so the elves flip and kip are basically two mathematical functions. Always remember that computing is very connected to mathematics and language. It's basically a merge of mathematics and language. So mathematical objects will always be important for computer science. Very well, and now if you remember, Ari had to turn the name Max into C, okay? She had to transform the binary matrices corresponding to the letters M, A, and X of the name Max into the binary matrices of the letters S, E, and E of the name C. Ari had to carry out these transformations, but she didn't have magic powers. She couldn't simply turn a 0 into a 1 or a 0 into a 0. So, who do you think can help Ari? Who will save her? Who will allow us to perform these transformations? Well, obviously, we need help. We need the help of our two elves, Flip and Keep. Okay? For instance, sorry. For instance, in the binary matrix of letter M, we need to transform this one into a 0. Okay? And so we are going to apply the function flip. Okay, so we have 1 as input, we apply function flip, and is gonna turn into a 0, because flip maps 0 to 1 and 1 to 0, right? Very good. And now in this second, in the second column, first row, we need to transform a 1 into a 1. So basically, we don't want to do anything. And if we don't want to do anything to the input, if we want the output to be exactly equal to the input, who you're gonna call? Keep, not Ghostbusters. Keep. The elf keep will transform this 1 into 1. So that's it. And so we can fill this binary matrix, all the 6 entries, and we get a binary matrix transformation. So basically a transformation matrix where each entry is either F or K, one of these functions. So the 6 entries of the transformation matrix regarding the transformation MS are as follows. Okay, so FK, FK, KK. You see why? Because basically the second column stays the same and the third row also stays the same. Okay, only the rest is flipped. Now, please let us test your understanding. So if you look closely to this picture, you see that all entries of matrix A are equal to the entries of matrix E except one. So basically, all entries of the matrix on the right will be equal to K. K, except one. Except one. So in which entry will function F appear? Where in which entry will we put health flip?
Okay, so
What do we have to flip?
I
Yeah.
will launch the poll.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Okay, we already have 3 correct answers. Just gonna wait a little bit more. We also have some correct answers in the comments. Come on, guys. I want a minimum of 8 answers until I skip. We have 5 so far, so we need 3 more. Otherwise, you will all fail and get a D. I'm kidding, as I said before. Okay, so everybody got it right again. The answer is second column, second line, okay? So here we have our F and the rest are just K's. Very good. Let's move on. We have this photo here to show you that our students are really creative. They're really creative, and instead of, looking at binary matrices, they saw these matrices as buildings with 6 apartments, and each apartment was either a 0 or a 1. And on the roof, which is the triangle, they wrote the letters corresponding to the binary matrices, okay? And so you can tell that they really enjoy the lesson. We have talked about binary matrix transformations. Now we're going to talk about binary sequence transformations because, as we know how to move from a binary matrix to a binary code and from a binary code to a binary matrix. It's easy, okay? So after Max So this worked, these transformations worked, and Artie transformed Max into C, and Max was really happy to be able to see again. But the fairy was still communicating with zeros and ones. So Max's limitation was solved, but the fairy's was not. How do you think that made her feel? Let's find out. And to find out, basically, we will transform the name Ari into something starting with M, which is how she felt, okay? How she felt. And you see here we have the binary sequences corresponding to the Braille codes of letters A, R, and E. And below, we already know that the first letter is M, but we need to find what the others one are. So we need to apply keep and flip to each of these zeros and ones in the binary codes, okay? And we have the transformation sequences. We just need to apply the transformation sequence to the binary sequence, to the binary code, and see what we get, okay? So, for instance, if we want to move from A to M, we need to move from, so 1 keep 1, 0 flip 1, 0 keep 0, 0 keep 0, 0 flip 1, 0 keep 0. So the transformation sequence associated with the transformation AM would be KF, KK, FK. All right? Now, we are going to test again your understanding. We want you to write which of the following binary codes is the output of the transformation sequence on the right. So we start with letter R, and the sequence of transformations is KKFFFK. So you just need to write what the binary code is, okay? Or select which binary code it is. You don't need to write the letter. Okay, we already have some correct answers. Just give it a few more seconds. So far, no one has said anything wrong. Like literally everybody is getting everything right. And that's amazing. Congratulations and thank you so much, because it means that you're actually paying attention. I'm flattered. Okay, so everybody got it right. The binary code is 10000, and I don't know if I forgot a zero or not. And it corresponds to letter A. So we already figured out the second letter of the name. So the first one was M, the second is A, and by a similar procedure, we could do a computation to figure out that the third one would be D. So Ari was mad, okay? We transformed the word Ari into mad, and we found out that Ari was mad. Of course she was mad. She wanted to talk like a normal person or like a normal fairy, I guess, but she was still communicating with zeros and one, and that was frustrating. But c'est la vie. Now, what else can we do with transformations? Well, we can take a transformation, take an input, and then apply another transformation to the output of the first one. So we can apply one transformation after another, and that's the composition of transformations or composition of functions. So one day, Ari started noticing that Max was acting a little weird. She felt like she was keeping something from her. And why would he keep something from her if they were best friends? Best friends tell their secrets, right? Well, she didn't know what to do. She felt embarrassed and frustrated. So the elves, they were seeing the fairy so weird too, so confused, that they decided to give her some help. They decided to give her some advice of what she should do about this secret of Max. And how did they do that? Well, the elves decided that they would send Ari a message with 3 words. Okay, and this message was the best advice that they could possibly give to someone in her situation. So Flip and Kip needed to transform Ari into the second word of the message, which is this word here, a mystery for now. And then they are going to transform this word into this word. Okay, so they will apply one transformation after another. See, the departing point, the beginning point is Ari, so A, R, and I, and here we have the binary codes. And then we are going to apply two sequences of transformations, okay? So we are going for instance, regarding letter A, we are first going to apply the transformation sequence K, 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 and then to that output, we are going to apply another transformation sequence, which is K, K, F, F, K, K. And because we are applying one transformation after the other, we are dealing with the composition of transformations, or function composition, mathematically speaking. So what will be the output? Okay, so let's look at a particular case. Say that we want to determine the output number of the flip and then K transformation depicted here on the right. You see, we have that highlighted one, and we need to flip it, and then we will keep it. Okay, so what will the results be? Well, if we apply flip, we'll get a 0, right? Because flip switches 0 for 1 and 1 for 0. But then we apply a keep, and keep does nothing. So the final result will be a 0. So when we start with the input 1 and we apply F and then K, we get 0. The output of the composition of these two functions is 0. Now, let's test your understanding again. No sleeping in this session. If the input is 1, okay, in this case, and we apply the function f, flip, twice, so we apply flip and then we apply flip again, what will the output be? So we will now launch the poll. For some reason, I can't see the poll. Now, notice that the answer is just a 0 or a 1. Okay, it's just a 0 or a 1. We're just asking for you to fill these yellow cells. Okay, so you don't need to write the full 6-letter code. Okay, good answers. So far, I believe everyone is answered correctly. Oh, there's a wrong answer, actually. That's okay. Don't feel bad. But yeah, most of you answered correctly, and the right answer is 1. Okay, because if we apply flip once, we get 0. And if we apply flip twice, we get 1. Okay, and basically, whenever you apply flip 2 times in a row, it's like applying keep. Because if you flip something and you flip it again, the original side will be facing up. Think of, like, I don't know, an egg or a pancake. If you flip and flip again, or a coin, if you flip a coin and then flip again, the orientation will be exactly the same. So flip is the identity function, mathematically speaking. Okay, very well. So if we do all this, we finally figure out the message that the elves sent Artie. So the message they sent Artie, ask him. Okay, so she was just like, oh my god, I think Max is keeping a secret from me, but I don't know what to do. Should I ask him? Should I not? Because she was afraid to ask him because she thought he could feel weird and not wanting to tell her. But yeah, the elf sent a message, Ari, ask him, because if we want to know something, we shouldn't be ashamed to ask. So the fairy went to meet the boy and asked him directly if he was keeping a secret from her. And before we reveal the answer, oh, no, sorry. So the answer is here, actually. Max confessed that he was hiding something from Ari. Indeed, he was. She was right, and he hadn't told anyone about it. The truth was, Max had a gift. He had a gift. He had a superpower, a special talent. So the boy was even more special than Ari thought. Before we discover what was the gift, we arrived at the end of part 2. So please raise your hand if you have questions or write something in the comments and we will answer your questions for then to continue on to part 3. Luis, do you want me to proceed to part 3 after the questions?
No, I think that's better to do the break now.
Oh, I completely forgot the break. I thought
After
okay. Well, I mean, yeah, sure, we can do the break now. But I think that the third part is quite short and it has a bit to do with this one, and the fourth part is quite long. So I was thinking more of a break around 6 o'clock, I don't know, around 6 p.m.
Okay.
But well, I don't know. First questions and then okay, then we can take a break. Perhaps you're a bit tired. I don't know. As you wish. So we have a question here. How long is this work done with the students? Well, what we are showing is like a shortened version. Of course, they have like different and more activities. So I believe that this took not the first semester, but quite a few classes, okay? So I would say some 12 classes, maybe exaggerating, but yeah, like 10, 12, I don't know. Because you know, we are showing you just a short version of the material, and I speak very fast. So in class we go deeper and we have whole more activities and all of that. So yeah, I believe these no, not 12 classes, Jesus, but like between 8 and 10. Probably 8 classes, I think, up to this point. Probably 8.
Yeah.
But they have classes with us all year round, once per week. It's like 45 minutes per week, roughly.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have any more questions. Okay, I don't think so. So either we move on to part 3 and then have a break, or we do the break now. What do you prefer? Please write in the comments if you want a break now or in 15 minutes.
Oh, the
Who do
end
you
goal.
want to answer? What is the end goal with this topic?
Well, if I understand correctly, so with this topic that Ines told you about, or the entire topic?
Well, basically, like binary codes are working with binary codes is fundamental because you know computer binary language and stuff. And why the emphasis on transformations? I think that your question has a lot to do with that. And I mean, so first, we are we are not like some other movements that jump quickly into like object-oriented programming or stuff. So we really want our students to know the basics first, to have a solid understanding of how computers work and the role of mathematics and language when you want to communicate to a computer. That's why we don't jump to programming right ahead. And this isn't directly related to programming. But by speaking of mathematical functions and transformations, they are dealing with something that the computer is doing all the time. Like right now, as I am talking to you, there are millions of zeros that are transforming into one, millions of ones that are transforming into zero. So those transformations of zeros and ones, they are occurring all the time. And even say you are watching a movie and you are in a certain frame of the movie, and then you know when you skip to the other frame you have other zeros and ones, so the computer is transforming zero into ones and ones into zeros and keeping zeros into zeros and ones into ones all the time. That's why transformation and mathematical functions are so important. And in certain programming languages, functions are treated as first-class citizens, meaning that they have a special role, and you basically build programs by composing functions. So function composition is also very useful in some for computer programming. So this is why our students are teaching this. Like, that is the end goal. Remember that they are very young, and that's why we tell this type of stories. Okay, we're talking about kids with 6-7 years. So yeah, we want something magical to offer them. We want to show that computing is magic. So if
Okay,
there are no
Ines,
more,
I think that we can move on. So for the third part, according to the comments here, and then do the break.
yeah, okay, good guys, let's continue. Okay, well, that's not what I wanted to share. I want to share just the window. Just the window. So share window, share window. Okay, and now view full screen mode. Luis, can you please confirm if you are seeing the
Yes, I'm
slides
seeing.
moving? Okay, they're
No, no,
moving.
no,
I have,
no, moving, no,
they're not
no,
moving.
no,
They're not moving. I don't understand. Nope.
no, not moving.
I really don't understand what's going on. I'm just gonna try again and hope that it works, I guess. Okay, are they
Yes,
moving
now,
now?
yeah, they're moving now. Yeah, that's correct.
I don't know. Why am I talking about computers? Like, why am I talking about computers if I don't understand how computers work? I seriously, sometimes I don't understand some things that happen. But that's a story for another time. Okay, so what are we going to talk about in part 3? So far we have talked about the letters and text and all of that, but there are other ways of representing information, namely using images, using pictures and drawings and all of that. So how are images represented on a computer if we only have zeros and ones? We will only talk about a very simplified version where pictures are only made of black and white squares, and probably by now you already know why. Okay, so we're talking about binary image representation. So how can we represent an image using the binary system? Okay, and then after we talk about the binary representation of images, we will talk about transformations of binary matrices using transformation matrices. And this is basically what we did before, but now we are applying it to images instead of railcodes. Now, in these classes, each of our students has an 8x8 checkerboard. Well, it isn't exactly a checkerboard because all the cells are white. So I don't know why checkerboard is written here. It should only be board. It's an 8x8 board, okay? And they receive black and white square pieces. But it suffices to give them black pieces, black squared pieces, because the cells of the board are already white, okay? But they have, you will see a picture of this soon. They have these physical boards, and they represent images using black and white squares. Um, and it's a binary representation, so it has everything to do with computing, because computers only understand 0 and 1, or black and white, or red and blue, or whatever we want. So now this time the transformations flip and keep will be applied to the set, which consists of the elements white square, black square. So before, flip and keep were transformations on the set 0, 1, but now we are going to deal with transformations on the set white square, black square. Okay? And so what is the state around Max and Ari's story? Well, Ari had discovered Max's secret, so she discovered that Max had a gift, So she wanted to know what was his gift, what was his special talent, his special power. Well, after some insistence, Max revealed his great secret. Basically, he was able to make anything appear as long as that thing could be represented on his magic board. So, say he wanted a piece of cake. If he could represent that piece of cake in an 8x8 board using black and white cells, then the cake would suddenly appear. Let me give you one example. Okay. So, um, wait, sorry, I skipped one slide. Exactly. So, one day Max felt really sad and alone, and all he wanted was to receive love and affection. So he took his magic board and tried to represent his desire. So if he wanted to receive love, he had to represent love using the 8x8 board with black and white squares. So what did he do? He represented a heart in his 8x8 magic board. Okay? He wanted love. It represented love using black and white squares. Right? And here you can see a picture of one of our students representing a heart on a board. His board isn't magical, unfortunately, but yeah, that's the students really like hands-on activities, you know, um, and they spent some time playing with these boards and these black and white pieces. Very good. Then on another occasion, Max's wish was to have a pet dog. So he represented a dog on his magic board, like you see on the right, okay? And then we asked students to reproduce this image on their boards, okay? And this way, students learn how to represent images using black and white squares. So basically, they learned how to represent images using zeros and ones, because we have this correspondence, 0 white, 1 black. And so they kind of have a rough idea that for the computer, an image is basically a binary matrix, okay, a matrix of zeros and ones. So now that we talked about representation of images, we are going to talk about image transformation, okay? Image transformations. More precisely, binary matrix transformations, because as I said, an image is basically a binary matrix. So as soon as Flip and Kip knew that the boy wanted a puppy, so if you remember, he wanted a dog, a pet dog, and saw the drawing on Max's board, they started devising a plan to prank him, because the elves were really naughty. And how did they prank him? Well, so recall that before, Flip turned 0 into 1 and 1 into 0. Now he will turn white into black and black into white. And similarly, he will keep white whites and will keep black black. Okay, so these are the transformations over the set white square, black square that we are going to work with. And the prank they did was they started changing the cells, okay? So you see, you have in the middle this matrix of transformations with keeps and flips. And if we apply this transformation matrix to the dog, what do we get? Okay, it's hard to visualize in your head, so I'm just going to show you the result. But basically, so I've already talked about this. Basically, the prank that they played on Max was transforming a dog into a cat. Okay, so they just applied these matrix of keeps and flips and turned the dog into a cat. So observe that the first cell remains white because we have a keep. The second cell is white and is turned into black because we have a flip, and so on, so forth. And here you can see one of our students just doing this activity, and he was starting to draw this cat here, okay? So he was starting to represent the cat on his board. Now, suddenly some bizarre phenomena began to happen involving Max's magic board. Okay, so one day Max represented a puppy on his board, as we saw, and suddenly the pieces started changing position, like out of nowhere. More specifically, like the first piece went to, in each line, okay, so picture a line. So the first piece went to the last place, the second piece went to the penultimate place, and so on and so forth. So basically, each line of the board was being reversed. It appeared backwards. Okay, so what happens if we reverse the position of the pieces line by line? Okay, what image do we get if we reverse each line? For example, let's look at line 1. Line 1, sorry, okay. So basically there is a black square in the third position, and now the black square appears in the third position, but counting from the right, not from the left, okay? So you must imagine that there is a mirror in the middle, okay? And you are going to apply a vertical axis reflection. So now we're going to launch a poll, and you must select the image that we get if we flip the dog, okay? If we flip the dog by reversing the order of the squares in each line, okay? So if you could please launch the poll.
Yes. Sorry. Okay, so here it goes.
So basically, you just need to reverse the order of the squares in each line. Let's see who will get this right. Okay, we already have a lot of correct answers. Oh, we have one wrong answer, actually. But it's okay, don't feel bad about it. So 88% of everybody who answered is correct. And the answers on the comments are correct too. So the solution is indeed A, okay? It's dog in number A, okay? This is the correct one. And why? So if we reverse the first line, we get this. If we reverse the second, we get this. Reverse the third, we get this, and so on and so forth, okay? Until we get a dog, which is basically turning to the right instead of turning to the left. It's like a vertical axis reflection, and that's the transformation. Okay, so Max wanted to understand what was going on, and so he drew the dog again. So he represented the dog again in his original position. In the original position, he represented the dog on his board, but the draw didn't stay that way for so long. Now what happened? The order of the lines was reversed, meaning that the first line became the last, the second line became the penultimate, and so on. For example, okay, so what happens if we reverse the order of the lines of these dogs? Let's see. You see, this first line is going to be transformed into the last one. And then the second line is going to be transformed into the seventh one. Okay? So we are reversing the order of the lines, not the cells. Do you see the difference between this transformation and the other one? Now you need to perform basically a reflection with horizontal axes, okay? So try to picture this in your head. What would happen if we just switch if we reverse the order of the lines? And if when you reach some conclusion, please answer the poll that Louise is going to launch now. Okay, so far so good. 100% of correct answers. Very well. Good to know you're engaging with the activities. Okay, just 2 more seconds. 1, 2. And the correct answer, drum rolls, is dog number 6. Okay? It basically stays upside down. Why? Well, this line moves here, this moves here, this moves here, this moves here, this moves here, here, and here. And so it suddenly has his head on the floor. Okay, so that's the end result. Now we can also reverse the order of the columns, okay? So the first column goes to the last place, the second column goes to the second last place, so on and so forth. Okay, let's reverse the order of the columns. Before it was the order of the lines, now it's the order of the columns. Okay, so next poll, you need to identify the final image when we reverse the order of the columns. Okay, so everybody got it right. Everybody got it right. Is indeed dog number 8. Okay, dog number 8. Facing right. And why? So you can see that's basically what happens. And what's the conclusion? So basically we conclude that we obtain the same figure, so a dog with the same orientation, either by reversing the order of the squares on all lines or reversing the order of the columns. Okay, so in poll number 8, the answer was also dog number A, dog A. And in poll 10, it was also dog A. Okay, so reversing the order of the squares on all lines is the same as reversing the order of the columns. And I want you to think if this is just a coincidence and why, or if this happens in general and why. The teacher can then ask more questions and try to make the kids justify or answer the previous questions. And you can also make a final question like, what happens to the dog image if we first reverse the order of the squares on all the lines and then reverse the order of the lines? What happens if you did this and then that and then that? So there are lots of questions that the teacher can ask. Okay, so in this case we are composing 2 transformations, and if you reverse the orders of the squares on all the lines and then reverse the order of the lines, the figure will have rotated 180 degrees. So
Yeah, I
I
think
guess
now it's time to do a break, Inês.
yeah, and probably we won't have time to show this. So yeah, we'll definitely do a break. Any questions?
Okay.
Perhaps it would be best to do just a 10-minute break. So we'll be back at 6:20 accordingly to our time zone. So a 10-minute break is okay for everybody?
Okay.
All right, so if you have no more questions, then we'll see you in 10 minutes.
Okay. See you
And
then.
thank you so much for everyone so far. Hello and welcome back. So you are energized for this last part? Can we proceed? Is everybody back here? Okay, so I think we will resume our webinar then. Although I don't have many answers, we may wait 1 or 2 minutes. In the meantime, I'm gonna share my screen. Oh, I think we have a question in the comments, Luis. If you could,
I'm answering here some of the
yeah,
comments.
okay, perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so I suppose most people are here already. I'll just wait 1 more minute and I will try to share my slides, hoping that you see them. I'm sorry, Wish. Oh, sorry. I need to do like, wait. Yeah, but I suppose that now it's stuck in the first one, right?
Yeah, it's stuck in the first.
Okay, so I need to stop sharing and share again.
Yeah,
that's the hack.
trick.
Yeah. For some reason, computers are stupid. And now you can see, right?
Yeah,
you can see
perfect.
it moving. Okay. So, welcome back to the final stage of today's webinar. I recall that we are talking about stuff that we teach about computing to kids who are 6, 7 years old. Now we are going to talk about lists. Okay, as Luis said, lists are one of the most important data structures in computer science and programming and everything. They're really versatile. Like lots of stuff can be represented, modeled by lists. Say you have a queue of people. It can be a list, and each element is the name of the people. Say you go to the supermarket and you have the prices. The prices can also be considered a list or a sequence of prices, So lists are everywhere, super useful. Let's talk about them. Okay, first we're going to talk about number lists. So lists whose elements are numbers. First, and not first, we are just going to talk about lists whose elements are numbers because we are running out of time. Okay, so let me tell you what happened with Ari and Max, because a lot of stuff happened between the last time we were together and now. And basically, one day they were climbing a mountain and it was snowing so much that they got inside a kind of a house, like a tiny house, which had a clock. And basically, they stepped inside a time machine. So they were inside this time machine and they traveled to the future. Okay, they travel to the future, so thousands of years into the future. They were in an unknown place, in an unknown year, and everything seemed very futuristic. So in the future, there were several robots. And the first robot they found, which was like the chief of the robots, had a futuristic name. So the futuristic name of the robot was A182129. Okay, so old people like Max and Ari had names made with words, but in the future, the names consisted of a letter like A, then an hyphen, or a dash, and then some numbers. Okay, and Max and Ari were quite curious, like, okay, this is the futuristic name of the robot, but what does this name mean? Is it John? Is it Matthew? Is it Susan? Okay, so they wanted to know the English name corresponding to the futuristic name of the robot. And so Artie said, well, it's very easy. Just find out which letter correspond to each of the digits that appears in the number 182129. Okay, so I'm going to skip. So Artie said, okay, number 1 represents letter A because A is the first letter of the alphabet. Number 8 represents letter H because H is the 8th letter of the alphabet. Number 2 represents letter B because B is the second letter of the alphabet, so on and so forth. And so I said, oh, the robot's name is Hey Bobby, Ha Bobby, Ha Bobby. That's the robot name. But it sounded a little weird, don't you think? So the fairy was wrong. That was not the robot's name. There was no guarantee that every digit was corresponding to a letter. Okay, so it all depended on how this number was divided into the various letters. For instance, okay, so like it can be interpreted. It could be, I need to speak slower, I know. It could be interpreted as 182129 or 182129 or 182129. So how should we divide this sequence of numbers to figure out the correct correspondence between the number, the position, and the letter of the alphabet in that position? Okay. The boy said, okay, so instead of starting with A, maybe we should group the two numbers together, the two first numbers together, get 18, and that will correspond to letter R, because the 18th letter of the alphabet is R. So the robot name is Rubabi. But Rubabi still sounded a little weird. And after some tries and after some help of the robot, they figured out that the robot was called Ruby. Okay? So 1821 to 9, that futuristic name was actually the name corresponding to Ruby. All right? And then the robot explained to them that they abbreviated futuristic names, the same way that, for instance, instead of Samuel, we say Sam, instead of Elizabeth, we say Beth, and things like that. So they also had a way to abbreviate futuristic names. And what they did was they ignored the first letter, and they dropped the dash, the hyphen that follows it. Okay, and so basically we get a sequence of numbers separated by commas. And okay, so you understand it better through pictures. Okay, so say we have the futuristic name A-182129. The abbreviation, so the shortened version, is we forget A, we forget the hyphen, and we focus on the numbers that represent the positions of the letters. So this will become 1821 to 9, all right? Because they figured out that his old name, his English name was Ruby, was 1821 to 9. So the shortened version is 1821 to 9, okay? And this is how we introduce the notion of a number, a sequence whose elements are numbers. So this is a number sequence or a number list. And then we do things with these lists, all right? So in second grade, students already start practicing writing sequences in a formal way, so using braces and commas. The braces are used to indicate where the sequence starts and where the sequence ends, and the commas are used to separate its elements, because the computer needs to look at something and recognize, okay, this is a list because it has these characteristics, and the computer needs to know when to start, when the list starts and where the list ends. So that's why we use these braces, and it's important that the students get comfortable with this syntax as early as possible, because it isn't that complicated, and we already start formalizing the concept of list. Okay. So then we ask the students to write the abbreviation of futuristic names of Ari and Max in the form of number sequences. Okay, so if you do the exercise, you will realize that the futuristic name of Ari is J1189, no, actually it's J1189 because R is 18. So A is 1, R is 18, and I is 9. So R is 1, 18, 9. And Max is 13, 1, 24. Okay, so M is 13, A is 1, and X is 24. And these J and K, just ignore them. We are, as I said, we are just showing you a shortened version, so never mind, students learn a lot more before this. Okay, and then we also ask our students to write the sequence that represents their own futuristic names. So now we have this very simple activity, and I basically has already revealed the answer. So if you paid attention, you shouldn't have much difficulty. You just need to say what the abbreviations for these names are. So what is the number sequence associated with 1189, and what's the three number sequence associated with 13124, which are the numbers corresponding to Ari and Max. So the poll is online. Okay. You just basically need to, sort of figure out the position of the letters in the alphabet and write the numbers using braces and commas. Let me take a look at your answers.
That's right.
Yeah, we already have some correct answers. Okay, everybody got it right so far?
Yep.
So I'm going to reveal the answers, okay? So as I said, 118.9, because those are the positions of the letters A, R, and I. And below 13.124, because those are the positions of M, A, and X. Very well, let's proceed to the future. Now that we already know what number lists or number sequences are, it's time to start transforming them, because we love transformations. We are obsessed with transformations, and transformations make us do stuff. So if we only add things but could do nothing with those things, the things would be useless by definition. So we will start to transform sequences, more precisely lists of numbers. Okay, so Robot Ruby took Ari and Max to a fabric full of robots. That's where robots were produced in the future. And he presented them some of his best friends, okay? Max and Ari were completely blown away by this futuristic city, by the way. It had flying cars and holograms and teleportation. It really looked like a place out of a science fiction book. So And basically, Ruby, the robot, explained that all these technological advances had been possible thanks to several innovative scientific discoveries. In particular, in the future, they had a lot more mathematical knowledge, which was crucial in the development of those technologies. That's why they cared so much about numbers. So the first robot that Ruby introduced to Max and Ari was called Reverse. Let's meet him. Okay. So he said, "My name is Reverse and I turn around any list. That's what amuses me." So what does Reverse do? So if the robot Reverse, for instance, picks up the sequence 25231, what is going to be the output? If we reverse the sequence 25231, what will we obtain? Okay, so this is our robot Reverse. The input is this number list, and is going to reverse the order of the elements. So is going to write the elements in the reverse order, backwards, okay? So we will get 13252. Okay, so we are just reversing the order of the elements. Very well. Then he presented the robot Sort. He said, "My name is Sort. I put in ascending order the numbers of a list. You have to be patient because I sometimes take a long time." So this is our robot Sort. What happens if Sort has the input 25231? What will be the output? So it puts the numbers in ascending sort. Okay, so you will write first the smallest number, then the second smallest number, and so on. So the last number on the sequence will be the largest one. Okay, so basically, if sort as input 25231, the output will be the sorted list. It basically just sorts in ascending order that list of numbers, and the output will be 12235. Then he introduced another robot called Nub or Noob. I think it's pronounced Nub. So everyone calls me Nub, even my parents. If a number appears once, it doesn't appear again. So what Nub does is this robot eliminates repetitions in a sequence. So he's going to look at this sequence 25231 and he say 2, as it already appeared in the sequence? No, so I'm gonna keep it. 5, as it already appeared in the sequence? No, so I'm gonna keep it. 2, as it already appeared in the sequence? Yes, so I'm not gonna write it. 3, as it already appeared in the sequence? No, so I'm gonna write it. 1, as it already appeared in the sequence? No, so I'm gonna write it. So basically, this is with the output. Is going to eliminate that 2 that appears a second time, because each number can only appear one time, and it respects the order by which the elements, the non-repeating elements, appear. Okay. So then one day, since Marty, Jesus, my brain is melting already. So since Max and Ari like to dance so much, Ruby took them to a robot nightclub where, well, everybody did the robot dance with the arms like this, you know. So they went on to this robot nightclub, and the robots were dancing. And Ari notes that as they dance, the robots continue transforming lists of numbers. And when two robots and dance together, okay, like this, something magical happened, and we are going to explain you what happened. By the way, notice that mathematically each robot represents a transformation, a function. So when two robots are dancing and holding hands, we are composing functions, we are composing transformations. For instance, say that the first robot, which is sort, picks up the sequence 25231. What will happen? Well, sort puts the numbers of the list in ascending order. So the output of sort will be the list 1, 2, 2, 3, 5. Right? And then it passes that to robot reverse because they are holding hands, okay? So sort passes the output to robot reverse. And now reverse is going to transform the list 1, 2, 2, 3, 5. And if you remember, basically reverse just switches the order of the numbers. So it's going to be 5, 3, 2, 2, 1, okay? So this is the final result. Mathematically, if we first apply function sort and then we apply function reverse, then the numbers on the list will appear in descending order. We are basically composing these two functions which have that property. Okay. We can do a little more abstraction if students understood it well and start using arrow notation. So an arrow represents a function, a transformation, and two robots holding hands means applying one transformation and then another, which means we have one arrow and then another arrow. So if we apply the function sort and then the function reverse to the input 25231, we get 5, 3, 2, 2, 1. Okay, again, function composition is really important, and we like to talk about it a lot. Then on the computer, we write it like this. So see here, this diagram with arrows? Well, we kind of do something pretty similar on a computer. We write the input, then we write an arrow symbol, we write the name, and then another arrow symbol, and then the other name. So to apply a function, we just sort of write this arrow, okay, this here. Then we put the name of the function, and then another arrow and the name of the function. And of course, you write it in a single line, but here we didn't have enough space, okay? So now we have a challenge for you. Now this is a real challenge, okay? So your goal is you're going to use robots sort, reverse, or noob, two of them. You need to find out what robots you need to use, so what transformations you need to apply in order to go from 25231 to 1325. So how can you transform this sequence using sort, reverse, and noob to get a result? So let me just tell you that sort puts a sequence in ascending order, okay? Reverse reverses the order of the elements in the list, and nub eliminates repeated elements. Okay? So I believe Louise will now launch the poll.
Yeah, it's already launched.
Okay. Let's see if someone gets this right. I'll give you some more time because so far we haven't had much answers. So reverse just reverses the order. Nub eliminates repeated elements. And sort, well, you don't really need sort because that's not even in the options. So you really just need reverse and nub. So you can even try it with pen and paper. What happens if I apply reverse twice? What happens if I apply reverse first and nub second? What happens if I apply nub first and reverse second? Okay, so most of you got it right. Most of you got it right. Very well. Very, very well. And the answer is this. Okay, so the first one is reverse. And if we apply reverse, we get the sequence 1, 3, 2, 5, 2. Okay. And what do we need to do this in order to get to 1, 3, 2, 5? Well, we just need to get rid of the last two because it already appears in the sequence. And to eliminate, to delete that element, we use nub. So the answer is reverse and then nub. Congratulations to everybody who got it right, because this exercise wasn't as easy as the previous ones, we know. So these are actually functions that basically every programming language has, and in particular this is the terminology that Haskell uses. Okay, and again, if we use a diagram with arrows, it would look something like this. Okay, so don't forget function composition all the time. Now, I don't know, Luis, I will
Yes.
passar the
So yeah,
bola. So the
yeah,
stage is yours. The stage is yours. Um, and
yeah,
do whatever you want.
yeah.
Thank you
Just
so much.
yeah, just to finish what we are discussing here, and to show you how then we animate these things in Haskell. Okay, I will just show you, following precisely what Inez has just said to all of you and explain on these last exercises. So this is now the kind of activities we do when we have the pseudo classes, so pseudo activities, so which means that the teacher uses these materials to show students things running, okay, in the
It's what we
computer.
call semi-plugged, okay? Which means
Semi-plugged,
that
yes. Yeah.
the students don't directly write things on their own individual computers, but they use the teacher's computer to try and run some programming cells, okay?
Yeah, that's right.
And this
And
is in Portuguese. This
yeah,
is
but no
in
problem. Yeah,
Portuguese,
yeah,
but
yeah. Yeah. But the idea is not to show the image, because the image is not important. Okay, so but just for you to understand that we start by the unplugged, as we told you. Then we go to this me plugged activities. Okay, and then we go, as we said before, and I think in the first webinar, we go to the plugged classes on the third grade. Okay. And so here, what we will see, okay, so for instance, sometimes we put images like this, okay, see, as Inês was saying, is in Portuguese, but these kinds of images, at least the importance of those images is to link the things that are being used in classes, and then the students see exactly the same elements when they do things executing these cells, okay? And when they are executing these cells, they are already programming, okay? And so here, what we are now seeing is that this is a list, okay, as the ones that you saw before. Then we see here the arrow, okay? So this is a combination of these two symbols, okay? The vertical line, and then the other symbol, okay? So these are two symbols that represents the arrow, and then we are putting the name on top of the arrow, okay? So we are saying apply reverse to this list, okay? And by executing this, students are seeing the results, okay? And so we then apply this sort to this same list of numbers, then we apply nub, then we apply reverse to this second list of numbers, and sort and so on, okay? So now for you to know how we can also apply this in in a composition of functions. Again, this image is in Portuguese, but doesn't matter. Okay, you see here that we are now combining two functions. Okay, so sort and then reverse, which means that we, by using robots and by thinking about robots, okay, you start with a sequence with a list of numbers, then you apply sort, and then you apply reverse, and you see here the result after applying these two functions, one after the other. Okay, and so by using this kind of syntax, very simple syntax, and very similar to the things that we are drawing in the board, okay, so with arrows and so on, because it's really very important, and according to our experience, to use what we call the arrow language, okay, so to use arrows to identify inputs and outputs, and then arrows again to identify the composition of two or more functions, okay, and then they, after understanding these concepts, they will start playing with this. Okay, and this is precisely why, and answering one of the questions that you have put in the chat, that is precisely why we are using the functional paradigm to start playing with these concepts, with these programming concepts in a more natural way. At least is how we are thinking and trying to apply all these concepts to what we are teaching to our students. And so this is why we are using at this stage Haskell instead of an object-oriented language that is much more tricky in terms of concepts that those kinds of languages use. Okay. And just to finish, I will show you also another notebook. Okay, so what we are using here are Jupyter notebooks, and this one is to play a little bit with images. Okay, so as you remember, the dog image was written as a sequence as a sequence of sequences. Okay, have here the 8 lines of these with these sequences. So after executing this cell, okay, so the computer now is now identifying the dog with a sequence of sequences. Okay, so this line means that dog is now a sequence of the sequences, line 1, line 2, line 3, line 8, okay? And then at the end, I am just drawing the dog, okay? And this other function drawing is precisely drawing the dog, okay? So, and then now, again, after working with these same concepts, okay, but now the difference is that the students are now not only playing with the ingredients, with the data that is behind the image, okay, but they are also seeing and looking at the result of the transformation. Okay, so here we are talking about transformations that are already using a map function, so which is an high order function that applies the same function to all the elements of a sequence. Okay, and then we have the drawing to show the result to students. Okay, and so here you can see quickly all the things that we have done in part 3 of this webinar. And again, you are just looking now at things being executed in a computer, or in this case, in a Jupyter notebook. Okay. So, and this is just for you to understand exactly what is the sequence of activities and the sequence of everything that we are trying to teach to our students, starting from early ages. Okay, so from the beginning of the first cycle, and then we will, after going to these plugged classes, okay, in the 3rd grade, then we will continue using Haskell and Jupyter notebooks for, of course, even more difficult activities and exercises. But then when they are at the third cycle, so when we are talking about the 8th grade or 9th grade, okay, then we try to explore with them development environments like Visual Studio Code and even multi-paradigm programming languages like F#, for instance. And only later we use Python. Okay, so in fact, as you know, the 4th webinar of this series will be a training in Python, and that's precisely because we are thinking about moving to Python when students are in the 3rd cycle, which in Portugal represents the students between 12 and 15 years old. Okay. And that's it. So we'll now just open these next few minutes for questions that you may have. If not, we are just finishing. So please put your questions if you have some to share with us. Yes, Paul, I will. Okay, Paul, you can.
Hi, hello,
talk.
and thank
Hello.
you very, very much for today's session, Inez and yourself, Lewis. This is fantastic stuff because the way in which you're putting it forward makes it so natural, you know, and the tasks that you have put together is so simply pen and paper. I am really, really enjoying this, you know, because
Thank you so much.
I've always sort of like looked at teaching programming, you know, going straight into sort of like the language that you're of the programming language that you're meant to be teaching, right? And whilst I know those in the background, it's like, is there a better way to explain this? You know, so, but it's really funny actually because when you were going through explaining these functions, reversing and lists and so on and so forth, I'm just like, this is such a cool way of doing it. It simplifies it, and it's pen and paper, so that by the time you know you're going to transition to a programming language, you already know how that function is going to be because you can do it on paper there and then, you know. So thank you very much. I'm thoroughly glued to this training because, as I said, it feels a very, very natural way to learn the programming paradigms, and without the complexity of sort of like involving a specific programming language from the beginning. You know, it's just the concepts of programming in your mind. So thank you very much.
No, thank you, Paul, for your comments.
It was very nice
My
of
pleasure.
you. Thank you.
Thank you.
And see you in your next webinar. Okay,
so yeah, regarding Jupyter notebooks, I guess we can share later the links.
Yeah, and we have a question here from Miss Carter. So how much harder does the Haskell get? And are Jupyter notebooks available for us to set up to run with Haskell? Yes, so 2 parts here. Is Haskell harder? Well, in fact, as you saw with these small examples, we are using Haskell also because it's very clean from a syntactical point of view. Okay, and so it's very easy for us to work with these concepts, in particular, of course, functional application and functional composition. But in fact, the syntax is really, really important for us and to simplify the way we teach these concepts. And some of the concepts that we teach to our students begin to be very complex very early. Okay, but again, Haskell simplifies that, and so it's good for us to do this following what Haskell allows us to do. Okay, this is one part of your question. The second part is that, yes, so we are putting the Jupyter binders, okay, which are links to a page on the web that will run immediately this Jupyter notebook environment. Okay, so as Paul was asking us, so we'll put the link for the one to the one that we have used on the first webinar in the Cisco platform. Okay, so we'll share that with you, and we'll also create some binders for some of these materials as well, in order for you to play a little bit with this kind of environment and to play a little bit with Haskell, as we have demonstrated here today. Okay,
So
thank you.
any other questions? If not, thank you so much, everybody, and we'll see you in the next webinar.
Now it will be on May 3. Okay.
Yeah,
But
May
you have
3rd.
all the information also in the platform, and we will send emails to you sharing further information as soon as we have it. Okay.
Okay. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Ms. Katar. Thank you. Thank you. Bye bye. Bye bye. See you then.